Welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a really comprehensive and honestly pretty provocative source titled Investing in You.
Yes.
And we're going to be exploring the actual structural mechanics of positive thinking.
Which I know for a lot of people, that phrase immediately sets off alarm bells.
Oh, absolutely. You hear positive thinking and you're already bracing yourself for, a bunch of sugar-coated, superficial platitudes.
Right, the toxic positivity stuff.
Exactly. But don't worry, that is not what this is. This isn't about just slapping a smile on a really bad day.
No, not at all.
We are looking at positive thinking as a highly practical, surprisingly rigorous psychological tool.
Very rigorous.
And right in the introduction, there's this quote that it completely sets the tone for everything we're about to discuss.
I love this quote.
It says, positive thinking is a bunch of crap, and crap makes great fertilizer.
Ha! Yes.
I mean, you really just can't argue with the utility of that logic.
You really can't. It's such a brilliant way to disarm the reader right out of the gate.
Yeah, it really is.
Because it immediately validates that profound skepticism that so many of us feel when we hear the phrase positive thinking. People just roll their eyes.
Totally. They dismiss it as new age fluff.
Exactly. But what we're really talking about here is an active structural framework for the mind. And the thing about frameworks is, if you approach one completely convinced it's going to collapse.
It's going to collapse.
Right. Your brain will subconsciously look for evidence to prove you right. So to counter that, the source gives us this incredible overarching metaphor that anchors our entire discussion today.
The garden metaphor.
The garden metaphor, treating your mind literally like a garden.
Which makes sense.
Because in a real garden, you can't just close your eyes and pretend the weeds aren't choking out your tomato.
That never works.
No. You have to actively get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
You have to pull up all of that negativity, all of that quote-unquote crap, and literally mulch it down into fertilizer.
You're repurposing the waste.
Exactly. Taking the waste and using it to help your possibilities actually grow.
Yeah. And to show how that emotional repurposing works in real time, there's a really great analogy in the text about contagious energy.
Oh, the traffic jam.
Well, first, the board meeting. So think about a highly tense group setting. Maybe a super stressful board meeting where everyone is just on edge.
We've all been there.
Right. And if someone in that room cracks a genuinely well-timed joke,
the tension just diffuses.
Instantly, the whole room physically relaxes. But contrast that with being a solo driver who just got cut off in traffic.
Yes.
You grip the steering wheel.
Your heart rate spikes.
And because you are alone in that confined space, there's no external catalyst. There's no one around to break the tension with good vibrations.
So you just stew in it.
You end up stewing in that anger for the entire commute.
Precisely. That traffic jam scenario, it perfectly illustrates how we become trapped in our own negative feedback loops.
It's an echo chamber.
Without a mechanism to disrupt the cycle, the negativity just echoes and amplifies. So if we want to stop being at the mercy of those internal traffic jams, we have to deliberately introduce positive disruptions.
And that process begins with what the text calls tilling the soil.
Tilling the soil of our mental garden.
Yes. Doing the heavy lifting.
Which means rooting out our past conditioning and our deep-seated fears.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because rooting out past conditioning is notoriously difficult.
It's incredibly hard.
Yeah. And the material suggests, starting with our childhood baggage, it offers this exercise called Connect the Influences.
Right.
So you sit down and you make a list of everyone you can remember from your early life.
Everyone.
We're talking parents, teachers, even the lady at the end of the street with the loud little dog.
Anyone who left an impression.
You list them all out, and then you look at your current habits and traits, and you start drawing lines to connect them back to those people.
Yes.
But my question when I read this was, doesn't this run the risk of just turning into a massive blame game?
That's a very common reaction.
It feels like an invitation to just point fingers for all of our adult flaws. Like, oh, I'm like this because of the lady with the dog.
Right. And that is the exact friction point most people hit when they try this exercise. But the goal here is not to assign blame.
Okay.
The psychological liberation comes from recognizing that so many of your current anxious tendencies or your defensive reactions, they were simply learned behaviors.
They aren't innate.
Exactly. They aren't character defects. They're adopted coping mechanisms. And because you learn them through observation, you can unlearn them.
Which means you can let them go without feeling guilty.
Entirely without guilt. And that absence of guilt is crucial for accurate self-assessment. which leads right into how we measure our current state using the self-esteem dipstick.
Oh, the dipstick. Yes.
What's fascinating here is how we have to navigate the extremes to find fertile soil.
Right, because the text contrasts two very severe ends of the spectrum here.
Yes.
On one end, you have the I love me disease.
Which is dangerous.
It's unchecked narcissism, this overflow of completely unearned confidence that just eclipses any sense of personal responsibility.
And on the other extreme.
You have people who are constantly digging a hole to China.
Yes.
They have absolutely zero confidence. They essentially apologize for their very existence.
Right.
But isn't it incredibly difficult to tell the difference sometimes? Like, between developing a healthy self-respect and accidentally slipping into that I love me narcissism, where is the actual line?
The line is empathy.
Empathy.
Empathy and self-awareness act as the counterbalance here. Healthy self-respect is acknowledging your worth without diminishing the worth of the people around you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Whereas narcissism requires constant external validation that drains others.
It's parasitic.
Exactly. So finding that balance, being secure enough to not need constant praise,
Yeah.
but humble enough to recognize your impact on others, that's the exact condition required for this mental garden to thrive.
And getting to that balanced state, it requires systematically breaking bad habits.
And conquering fears. The fears that keep us clinging to those extremes.
Which brings us to the famous 21-day rule.
Yes, the 21-day rule.
We know it takes roughly 21 days of consistent, deliberate action to break an old habit or form a new one.
It is a grind.
The total grind. You have to actively choose to stop reacting defensively and start responding optimistically over and over again.
The 3 straight weeks.
But I was actually really surprised by what the source highlighted as the biggest roadblock to maintaining that 21-day streak.
Oh, it's not what you'd think.
I really assumed it would be some deep, unresolved psychological trauma, but instead it points to 3 very common everyday fears.
Yes, the big 3 feels that limit us. Humiliation, rejection, and failure.
The everyday terrors.
They keep people completely paralyzed. And the prescribed cure here is exposure therapy.
But not the clinical kind.
No, certainly not the terrifying clinical kind you might picture.
Exactly. The suggested exercises are these hilarious, low-stakes micro-exposures just designed to build up your immunity.
They are so fun.
For humiliation, the suggestion is to do something mildly embarrassing on purpose.
Like wearing your fluffy slippers to the grocery store.
Or getting up and singing at a karaoke bar while completely sober.
Which is terrifying for most people.
Truly. And then for rejection, you're supposed to call up a local country music radio station.
A country station.
And earnestly request a song by Metallica.
I love that one. You know they are going to reject you.
The DJ is absolutely going to say no.
But you do it just to physically feel the sting?
And realize your world didn't end.
Exactly.
And then for failure, the advice is to try nailing Jell-O to a tree.
Literally nailing Jell-O.
Or attempting to beat a massive brand new video game in a single sitting. You are guaranteeing failure from the start.
And the psychology behind that is actually quite profound. By guaranteeing failure in a controlled, low-stakes environment, you demystify it.
It takes the power away.
You realize failure isn't this catastrophic, identity-destroying event. It's just a momentary outcome. I highly recommend the Jell-O exercise simply for the absurdity of it. It breaks the tension.
It really does.
But I do appreciate that there's one very specific, playful caveat about fear mentioned here.
Oh, the spiders.
Yes. While we absolutely need to conquer humiliation, rejection, and failure, arachnophobia, the fear of spiders, is deemed completely justifiable.
Completely justifiable.
Spiders have fangs and they drop out of nowhere.
They drop out of nowhere.
That is not a psychological barrier you need to overcome. That is just pure biological self-preservation.
Let's absolutely leave the spiders alone.
Agreed.
So once we've tilled the soil, mapped our influences, and taken the sting out of those everyday fears, we move into the next phase of the garden metaphor.
Weeding and pruning.
Weeding and pruning. And this is where things get a bit heavier. We're looking at managing trauma, establishing strict boundaries, and dealing with the approval habit.
Right. It's one thing to face a hypothetical fear of rejection from a radio DJ. Right. But what happens when that crap in the garden is actual deep-rooted trauma?
That's a whole different ballgame.
It is. Now, when dealing with minor to moderate setbacks, a dramatization technique called "it could be worse" is suggested.
Okay, how does that work?
For example, if you bounce a check, it is undeniably stressful. But you intentionally dramatize it. You think, what if I bounced multiple checks? which led to my car being repossessed,
Uh-huh.
which eventually led to me becoming homeless.
Hold on. Leaping from a bounced check to living on the streets, that sounds exactly like catastrophizing.
It does sound like it.
Isn't that a negative cognitive distortion? If someone's already anxious, won't walking down that extreme path just induce a panic attack?
That is a vital distinction to make. Unhealthy catastrophizing is when your brain involuntarily drags you into panic. It convinces you the worst-case scenario is inevitable.
Okay.
This dramatization technique, however, is a deliberate, controlled, perspective-shifting exercise.
Controlled being the key word.
Exactly. You are consciously walking your mind to the extreme edge, specifically to look back at your actual reality, which is just one bounce check and a $30 bank fee.
Huh.
By intentionally contrasting the absolute worst with your current situation, the present problem suddenly feels highly manageable. You're using the extreme to shrink the current stressor back down to its actual size.
That makes a lot more sense. It's about taking the wheel of your own anxiety.
Precisely.
Now, for processing those heavier, lingering feelings, journaling is brought up as a key mechanism, but it outlines very specific methods.
Very specific.
You have free-form writing, which is essentially a brain dump where you just ignore grammar and structure entirely.
Get it out.
Then there's memory release, where you write down a deeply painful memory with the explicit intention of symbolically destroying the pages afterward.
Burning them or shredding them.
Right. And then my personal favorite, the Dear Jerk letters.
Oh, the Dear Jerk letters are fantastic.
You write out exactly what you want to say to the person who wronged you, completely unfiltered, but you never actually send it.
No, never send it.
The act of just getting it out of your system is deeply therapeutic.
And regarding the mechanics of that journaling process,
Mm-hmm.
there's a subtle but incredibly powerful psychological tip here. You must carefully choose the right writing instrument.
The pen.
Yes, you should never, ever use a pencil,
Why is that?
because writing in pencil implies a temporary state. It subconsciously tells your brain that these thoughts, or the boundary you're setting and the healing associated with them, that they can simply be erased.
Wow.
Using a pen makes the release permanent. It signals to your brain that a final decision has been made.
I love that, the permanence of the pen.
It's very powerful.
And speaking of things we need to permanently erase from our mental garden, let's talk about the approval habit.
Yes.
Why are we so deeply wired to care about what everyone else thinks of us? Reading through this section, it really struck me that we essentially cling to teenage social hierarchies long after we've grown up.
We really do.
But adult life is not a high school popularity contest. In fact, if you look closely at history, the people who fundamentally change the world or achieve massive success, they are rarely the prom kings and queens who peaked at 17.
Not at all. The need for approval is basically an evolutionary hangover.
An evolutionary hangover.
Yeah, we wanted to stay in the tribe so we wouldn't get eaten. But in the modern world, outsourcing your self-worth to the crowd is paralyzing.
Exactly. And to prove it, we get these incredible examples in the text of highly successful people who were absolute outcasts in high school.
Some really surprising names.
Henry Kissinger was apparently teased relentlessly and called a little faso.
Unbelievable.
Walt Disney, of all people, was dismissed by his early teachers as a shiftless dreamer who wouldn't amount to anything.
Walt Disney?
Right. The actress Heather Graham was constantly mocked for being too quiet and socially awkward. And Eaton Sugarman, who became a massively successful club owner, was explicitly told by his high school guidance counselors that his life would go absolutely nowhere.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. How much of your current potential is being stifled because you're secretly trying to appease people whose opinions shouldn't even matter to you anymore?
That is a question.
To protect your energy and start weeding out that need for approval, you have to establish a deeply personal moral code.
You have to know what you stand for.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you don't just reflexively agree with the room to keep the peace. And the most critical tool for protecting that energy is learning the mechanics of saying no.
Yes. The text provides a top 10 list for this.
10 ways to say no politely but firmly. Because the reality is, constantly overcommitting yourself to please others is a literal conspiracy against your own success.
A conspiracy against yourself.
The friction of saying no is uncomfortable for about 5 seconds. But the resentment of saying yes to something you hate lasts for weeks.
Weeks.
Every time you hand over your time to someone else's priority, you are actively saying no to your own goals.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because once we have weeded out the need for approval, and we've actually learned to protect our energy by saying no, We finally create the space to start cultivating growth.
The next phase.
And the foundation of growth, counterintuitively, is making mistakes.
Yes.
But we have to differentiate the type of mistakes we're making. We have to start making interesting mistakes.
That distinction is absolutely vital. We tend to lump all failures in the same bucket of shame,
Right.
but they are not created equal.
Not at all. There is a brilliant contrast drawn here in the source. A stupid mistake is stubbing your toe on a rake that you carelessly left out in the middle of your yard.
You didn't learn anything from that.
You just learned you should probably pick up your gardening tools. It was completely avoidable.
Right.
But an interesting mistake, that is ruining $30 worth of powdered sugar and imported chocolate chips because you misread a complex candy thermometer while attempting to start your very own artisanal candy-making business.
Love that example.
That mistake taught you something highly specific. It occurred precisely because you were pushing your own boundaries.
Yes.
And it gave you the exact information you need to move one step closer to your dream.
And to guarantee that those interesting mistakes actually translate into growth rather than just discouragement, we look at the concept of an error log.
The error log.
The point here isn't just to keep a depressing diary of everything you've done wrong.
No one wants that.
Right. The true psychological liberation of the error log is that it strips away the shame of failure and transforms it purely into actionable data.
Data you can use.
There's this highly relatable, dryly comedic example provided about building a bookshelf.
Oh, this is great.
Day 3 of the log reads, cut shelves with a rotary saw on the couch. Day 4 reads, buy a new couch.
Buy a new couch, it completely removes the emotion from it.
Exactly.
You don't sit there agonizing over how stupid you are for ruining the furniture. You just log the data, adjust the variable, and move forward.
Just adjust the variable.
Oh, and once you have that data, you can start aggressively visualizing the success you actually want.
Visualization is key.
We are introduced to 3 distinct visualization techniques to open the blossoms of the mind.
Yes.
First is guided visualization, where you are essentially the captain of your own mind. You're actively directing your feelings and steering your confidence toward a specific goal.
Taking the wheel.
Then there is receptive visualization. This is where you detach a bit and watch yourself on a screen, like a movie director.
It is highly recommended for prepping for conflicts.
Right, so if you're anticipating a tense negotiation with a bank manager, you watch it play out smoothly on the screen of your mind beforehand.
So your nervous system is already calm when you actually walk into the bank.
Exactly.
The third is altered memory visualization, which I actually find the most fascinating.
How does that one work?
You literally go back into a past, painful memory and rewrite the ending in your mind. You give yourself the closure or the defense you never had in reality.
Wow.
These visualization techniques are so potent because your brain actually struggles to differentiate between a vividly imagined event and a real one.
It feels real to your nervous system.
Yes. You are physically training your neural pathways to expect a positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also a profoundly counterintuitive piece of advice for cultivating growth hidden in here.
The power of surrender.
The power of surrender.
Because sometimes the absolute most positive thing you can do for yourself is to simply give up.
Give up.
If you are in a career you despise or a situation that completely drains you, holding on to it out of a misplaced sense of duty or stubbornness is toxic.
It is.
We get stuck waiting for that magical someday when things will miraculously get better, but someday is right now.
Right now.
If the path you're on is making you miserable, surrendering your current expectations so you can pivot toward what actually fulfills you, that is the ultimate, most courageous act of positive thinking.
You're clearing the dead wood from the garden.
Exactly.
Right.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about tilling the soil, exposing ourselves to rejection, writing letters in pen, and visualizing growth. But I want to know about the actual harvest.
The payoff.
What is the physical, real-world payout for the listener if they put all this rigorous mental work into practice? Because a lot of people still assume the only payout is just feeling a little more cheerful throughout the day.
The payout is far more visceral than a fleeting good mood. It is a documented biological reality.
Okay.
To illustrate the absolute extreme of this, we look at the astonishing example of the late actor Christopher Reeve.
Superman.
Yes. After his devastating horseback riding accident left him completely paralyzed from the neck down, the medical prognosis was incredibly grim.
Right.
But Reeve utilized a fiercely optimistic, almost militant mindset. He survived for 9 years, which was far longer than anyone anticipated, and he even recovered unexpected physical movements that completely baffled his medical team.
That's incredible.
His mindset was actively altering his physical reality.
To defy strict medical expectations entirely through the force of will and relentless optimism is just staggering. It really shifts positive thinking from a soft skill to a survival mechanism.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it ultimately comes down to documented brain chemistry.
The science of it.
Exactly. When you harbor negative thoughts, you are lighting up the right prefrontal cortex of your brain.
Okay.
This triggers your body's stress response, flooding your system with cortisol, which scientists have directly linked to a weakened immune response. You literally become more susceptible to physical illness.
Wow.
Conversely, when you actively sustain positive thoughts, you activate the left prefrontal cortex.
The left side.
This downregulates that stress loop and actively strengthens your immune system. You aren't just thinking happy thoughts, you are biologically fortifying your cellular defenses.
Which perfectly explains the awesome aging statistic that completely blew my mind while reading this.
It is a shocking number.
Happy, optimistic people live, on average, 7.5 years longer than unhappy people.
7.5 years.
7.5 extra years. That is a bigger life extension advantage than you get from not smoking, exercising regularly, and maintaining a healthy weight combined. Your mindset isn't just a mood indicator. It is quite literally a life or death metric.
It truly is, which is why actively tending to this mental garden is not a luxury reserved for people with lots of free time.
No.
It is a fundamental health necessity.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, there are strict instructions for how to enjoy that harvest.
Yes, the celebration.
When you actually achieve a goal or you make a massive psychological breakthrough, you have to intentionally celebrate it. The advice is to take a dedicated me day.
A full day.
And there is a very strict rule for this day. You are not allowed to do favors for anyone else, period.
None.
No running errands for a friend, no picking up an extra shift. You have to aggressively bask in your own success so your brain fully registers the reward of all this positive thinking. It closes the loop.
And as you start cashing in on those rewards,
Yeah.
you will fundamentally realize that the concept of luck is entirely a myth.
A total myth.
The source points out how utterly absurd it is to accidentally break a mirror and then passively wait 7 years for the bad luck to wear off.
Just waiting around.
Waiting for your luck to magically change is a tragic waste of time when you now possess the exact psychological tools to actively shape your own reality.
It has been a wild journey through this material today. We've gone from turning crap into fertilizer to calling a country station to ask for heavy metal.
To understanding how our thoughts literally rewire our biological immune system,
It's been fascinating.
and to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
If your mindset literally dictates your physical immune system and can extend your life by nearly a decade, what interesting mistake are you willing to make tomorrow that could become the seed for your next great success?